Howdy again, it's Mr. Pete, your YouTube shop teacher, and today I am beginning a multi-part series on micro lathes, and we'll start with these little Manson lathes here, and there'll be several videos on each one of these, and I'm going to explain all about them, give you a lot of still pictures, a lot of close-ups and so on, and then even attempt to do just some real light machining on them. Remember that these tiny machines here are made for model making and working on cameras and things like that, electronics. Certainly not heavy duty, but fun, and these were expensive lathes, and they are real lathes. These are not models. So I think you're going to find this very interesting. I'm going to give you a lot of historical information along with this, and if this video in fact draws enough customers, I probably will proceed to talk about Unimats and Shurlines and some other machines as well. Now these are antiques, as I said, and are very valuable, and they are on loan from the wonderful folks over there at Lost Creek Machine. So the website will be down in the description here if you want to check that out. And in fact, one of these, this one, as of December of 2023, is for sale, the smaller one. But I don't know when you're watching this, so it might be long gone by then. Let's begin this long journey. In this video, I'm going to talk strictly about the smaller one here. It's also the older one. Very interesting. Again, this belongs to Lost Creek Machine, as you can see right here. This is the slightly larger one called the Duo Lathe, and there'll be videos on that too. I just want you to see the comparison here of the two in sizes. This is probably about 20 or 30% larger than the other one. And I put the coffee cup here just to give you an idea of the scale of these machines and how really small excuse me, they are. There's a 6-inch scale, and even a micrometer looks pretty much out of proportion, doesn't it? And to top things off, there is a complete extra bed along with the carriage and tailstock for this, and in a later video in this series I will be talking strictly about this and even taking it apart. Matt said go ahead and take it apart, show them the inside of the apron here, so I certainly intend to do that at a later date. Both of these little machines have electric motors inside the base here. In fact, this is the on and off switch for the smaller one, and the Duo Lathe, really this switch is a reversing switch. Forward and reverse, you actually control on and off, and the speed with this little foot pedal, which looks suspiciously like my mother's Singer sewing machine. And also in the original mahogany box here, and you can still see the name Manson. I don't know if Charlie's dad made these or what, but anyway, in the little box here is a complete accessory kit. Now I think there's a few things that do not belong in here, but this essentially belongs with the smaller one. I don't know if there was a kit for this or not, for the Duo Lathe. There were some other models too, which I don't want to talk about because I don't know anything about them. But in here, as you can see, there's a 4-jaw chuck, some face plates, collets, lathe dogs, and there will be a separate video going through this as well. And they made many different versions of this over the years. Some were wooden boxes, some were plastic, and some were metal. Both of these machines have collet attachments, but they do not use the same collets. But I also have, or they also have, a little 4-jaw that would fit on here, and we'll use that later on. There is no 3-jaw, and as I understand it, 3-jaw chucks came out several years after the machines, because you can imagine trying to make a scroll chuck in this scale. I'm sure it was a difficult job, especially to make it accurate. So the 4-jaw chuck probably is the better choice to use on this, but it does not fit on this machine. At least I do not believe at this time. Remember, these are all new to me, and I'm learning about them just as you are. Now I'm going to put this one away, and you won't see it again until later, 3 or 4 videos from now, unless I bring it back out to compare it. But essentially I want to talk about the original Manson lathe. The first model of the Manson lathe came out in about 1946. However, this one may be a little bit newer than that, but certainly no newer than maybe 1952. And the name of the company changed several times as they were bought out over the years, but originally it was the Manson lathe, made by Small Machines in the City of Angels. No zip codes yet. I took the liberty of compiling the specifications for this little machine and writing it out on a card. So you can see here that it's 3 11/16 wide, 9 3/16 long, 6 3/4 inches high, and it weighs about 5.5 pounds. And the work capacity is, well, it has a 2-inch swing, 3 inches between centers, maximum of only 1/8 inch collet. Imagine that. Think of an 1/8 inch drill. And the spindle bore is 3/16. This is the original introductory ad that appeared in Popular Mechanics in 1947. Go ahead and pause your video and read that, or I will put a still picture at the end, but you will notice there that it's $60.75. Well, in 2023 money, that is $840. So that was pretty expensive back then, because remember, that was right after the war, and companies were retooling, and that's why they came out with this. I think they had the capacity to make things, and they had the manpower out there on the West Coast because of all the aircraft plants, so they went ahead and started to make these tiny little lathes. These pictures courtesy of the wonderful vintagemachinery.org website. Thank you, Keith. This is the original paperwork that came with the machine. Notice how yellow it is, but somebody has got a hold of this and did some clipping and mutilating and so on, but there's still some good information in here. Pause your video and read this. Unfortunately, a portion of this is missing, as you can see, but here are all the key features talking about its accuracy and how all of the parts are made, and you might want to read that. And there is the original toolbox and an inventory of what is supposed to be in the box. For those of you that want to do independent study, go to this website out of the UK, and there are several pages of information about the Manson lathes, historical information. You will find it fascinating. Here is the dead center for the headstock and or the tailstock. Now, I do not know the taper, but I'm going to show you something here. But this is a number 1 Morse taper, a number 2, and you know how that goes. But look at how small that is in comparison. It is not a Morse taper, as you can imagine. But let me show you what it says in that sheet. This is a letter to a customer from Small Machines Incorporated, dated 1949, and the customer was asking about the tapers in the headstock and tailstock. So I'll scan down this real quickly. You can pause your video if you want to read this, and I'll put a still picture of it at the end. But it is in regard to the tapers. It's kind of difficult to understand because they certainly, as I said, are not Morse tapers. Okay, with the lathe mounted on a little turntable here, give you a good view of all sides. And then as soon as this scene is over, I'm going to talk about the different materials that the machine is made of, and then I will ultimately take off the end cover here, and we'll look at how the motor is installed and the belts and all of that good information. And I hope you are enjoying this. Tell your friends. I'm having fun doing it. Look at the neat little chip pan here. Isn't that awesome? Isn't this a beautifully styled machine by industrial designers? And for those of you that are familiar with the Monarch lathe from the 30s and 40s, I think the model EE, and several YouTubers out there have them, including Keith Rucker. And I will attach a picture right now, and you will see the similarities between this and the original Monarch lathe. This is a 2-inch diameter 3-jaw chuck with reverse jaws. You can see how massive that looks compared to this machine. In no way could this be adapted, and it's way too heavy, so the actual chuck has to be about 1 inch in diameter, like the faceplate, maybe a little bit bigger, but not very big. This machine has a 2-inch swing, so I put a large fender washer that's 2 inch in diameter right over the spindle here, and you can see that it is actually touching the saddle here. So 2 inches is the very maximum that you could turn. And then between centers, as I said before, it's approximately 3 inches maximum. If I may remove the faceplate, a pretty easy job, and it's threaded on. The center is still in there, but the thread is a 7/16 fine. That's a 7/16 20 Unified National Fine thread. So they used a standard thread on that, which is, I find, kind of surprising. So various items could be made and easily tapped and threaded so that it would fit the lathe if you had a need. Again, the on and off switch. Now notice that everything works on this, so it is a real lathe. It's a real tiny lathe. So the carriage moves back and forth with the hand wheel. There also is a lead screw and a power feed in one direction only. And this would be the split knot lever, half knot lever. I will show you that in detail with this at a later date. And the tailstock can be moved in and out, up and down, like that. Not up and down, but in and out, and can be locked. I'll probably talk more about lubricating this in another video, but they recommend, believe it or not, using 3-in-1, and this machine has oil light sleeve bearings. And you can take that little plug out and it can be oiled with the 3-in-1. I'm not going to do that now, but the other lathe, the dual lathe, has ball bearings. Okay, I'd like to talk about the materials that this machine is made of. There's all metal, no plastic. So the entire housing here and cabinet and everything is at zinc die casting. It may be Zamak, I do not know. And then up here on the carriage there is a combination of steel. So that's not steel, but we got some parts that are. For instance, the bed is cast iron. This is aluminum, steel tool post, steel quill, but we've got aluminum or Zamak here, I'm not sure, because it's painted. So there's a variety. This is aluminum, stainless steel right here. Quality materials are used. In just a moment I'm going to remove the end cover here. There are 2 small screws, so that'll come off easily. But let's take a look at the bottom before I do that. It's all hollow, and it's a die casting. Look at how thin the walls are. And there is the motor. Very small motor. In fact, it's a shaded pole motor, kind of like would be used on fans and other very, very light equipment. So this would not be a variable speed motor. That's an AC motor with the on and off switch, just a very simple wiring. Needs a new grommet here. Matter of fact, I think the grommet broke off. I'll see if I have a spare. So let's take the cover off now and see what it looks like from the headstock end. I'm not able to completely remove the end cover here, so I just got it swung off to the side. To be honest with you, I do not know what holds the hand wheel on, but we can see everything that we need to from this view. So if you look here, there is a double pulley here, so it's a two-speed machine, a high and a low. Again, not variable speed. So I'm in the smaller pulley right now. It's a round belt, almost like an O-ring. Does not look to be in very good shape. And of course there are two pulleys up here, and you cannot see them. There's the motor, of course, but you see that there are some brass gears in here. Now this gear here that I'm touching, if you can see it, is a gear that's on the very end of the lead screw. So that is what is driving the lead screw. There is no gearbox, there are no change gears, there's one speed only on the longitudinal feed, although I guess you could say two, because we have two spindle speeds. Now the other machine is much more complicated than this, and you'll get a better view of that when we get to that machine. So I'm going to close this up now. Really nothing more to see other than how beautiful these little die castings are, and I wish I could show you the back side of this. Maybe I can a little bit. And there are two hold down screws for the bench to hold it to the bench because it's going to rattle around. But they're tiny little holes, like looks like 3/16. So there's one on each end. Okay, I'm going to close it up. Well, here's the back side of the cover. Look at the little louvers. You know, that would have been a very expensive die to make, even back in the 40s. It's very thin. One of the most astounding things about this little machine is that the bed itself is cast iron. I don't mean steel, I don't mean aluminum or zinc or anything else. It is cast iron. And even more amazingly, this has V-ways as opposed to flat ways that would be much easier to make, and we're used to flat ways on our Atlas and Craftsman lathes, but this is so robustly built. And by the way, on this one, the little lock here for the quill is broken off, but that's what it should look like. I'm not surprised that it's broken off because it looks so delicate. However, it is made of steel. First I thought maybe it was zinc, and again I don't want to talk too much more about this until the later video, but on the rack here is where they stamp the serial number. And why he had an extra bed with some of the parts, I do not know, but I'm glad because it's just a perfect teaching aid, isn't it? I used to have a whole bunch of 1/8 inch high-speed steel, and I don't know what I did with it, and I thought no lathe uses 1/8 inch square, but this does, and it's held directly in a little lantern type tool post. No Aloris tool post will fit. And again, I'm calling these micro lathes as compared to some of the lathes that are just mini lathes, like perhaps a Unimat and a Sherline and a TIG. They are what I would just call mini lathes. This is so much smaller. Well, that concludes this chapter of the micro lathes. Hope you enjoyed it. There'll be a bunch more, so keep watching for them. And in the following episode, I will show how to lubricate this. Not a big deal, that's pretty easy. And then how it actually works. I haven't run it yet. And then in the following one, I will attempt to do a little actual machining. So stand by for all of that, and I'll see you soon. This is Mr. Pete saying so long for now. Give me a thumbs up if I deserve it, and there are a lot of still pictures that will be at the end right now.